Hey everybody, welcome back to Money Saving Monday. So today I'm building a jig or fixture, whatever you want to call it, to help save me time. And as we all know, time is valuable. So the idea is I have some projects coming up this winter that are going to require me to work outside away from the house. And rather than having to grab my chop box or my miter saw and the miter saw table for it and get everything set up and pull out cords, I will just be able to take a couple sawhorses, my cordless skill saw, circular saw, excuse me, and this fixture. This is a zero clearance guide for a circular saw. I can adjust it from anywhere from 90 to 45-degree angle and be able to, put my mark, my layout, and then move this guide right up next to my layout, run the saw across it, and it's going to cut it out. So I am using, later in this build, at the end of the build, you'll see me using my corded circular saw with it, but my cordless one's in storage and I didn't feel like getting it out. So I'm just building this, I'm going to use it, and I'll make the improvements I need to make on it and design it around my cordless one when I do the permanent build. So all these parts that you see me working on here are the parts that'll adjust this thing, adjust it from the 90-degree angle up to the 45-degree angle. And all these little parts right here will actually sit on top of the work material. So anything, the hardware, I'm at the bottom side of it now, the hardware needs to sit flush with the bottom so it'll sit nice and flat on top of the material that I'm cutting. So to do that, I just inset there's three places that need to have inset. Either two bolts need to be inset and the head of a nut needs to be inset. So I just carve out what material I need. The hardware I have is a little too long, so I just use my angle grinder to cut it to length, and then I flatten everything out on the disc sander. So at this point, I want everything to be as low profile as possible. So I am carving out a little bit on the back fence, or the back fence support. So the adjustment rod that'll adjust this thing to the different positions will sit at the same level as the fence will. And I'm just going to use my multi-tool to cut that out and then remove any excess material with my chisel. So at this point, I'm just making sure everything moves nice and freely. And I'm pretty happy with that. So I'll go through and add the rest of the nuts and bolts that I need to be flush to the bottom of it and glue them in place. Now I have one bolt that sticks through, and this is the groove on the adjustment rod will slide over the top of that, and then I've got a star knob that'll go over the top of that bolt and lock everything in place at the particular angle that I need it. So that's the adjustment section of this fixture. Now I'm just doing some layout for the two fences. The flat piece that lays on top of the material has a fence, and then of course the back section has a fence as well, so I can butt that up against the material and hold that tight while I'm making the cut. At this point, I'm just adding the fences, and I'm using, again, CA gel, and I will just use my 23 gauge brad nailer to kind of tack those in before I put some clamps on them. And I'm not using any quick set for this or activators, so I'm just clamping them down, leaving them for about 15 minutes, and that seems to be enough time. Now, because I am going to be torquing this thing, I'm going to come back and add some screws to it as well. I'm just going to add some 1-inch screws to it. So after the thing dried up, I took my homemade squeeze clamps off and just kind of tuned up a couple of spots that were a little tight with my Japanese saw. And then I'm going to come back with a small drill bit and just drill some holes where I'll put some screws in. Now, I wish I would have done a better job of slowing down with this countersink. If you pay attention, the countersink that I'm using here is actually is an aluminum. It's meant for non-ferrous metals. It works great for wood. But if you drill a hole first and you use a traditional countersink behind it, it gets a lot of chatter. With that type of countersink, there's no chatter. You get a really beautiful countersink after you've already drilled the hole. I'll put a link in the description box below if you guys want to check those out. Again, here's a better shot of that countersink. I've had people ask me about this before. I would definitely recommend having these in your arsenal, especially if you've already drilled a hole and you change your mind, you want to come back and countersink something. Amazing little countersinks. So this is the fixture with both fences on, the back fence and the top fence. The only thing I have to do at this point is to add the bed for the circular saw to ride on. So I'm adding a little bit longer bed to this because when you change the angle to 45, you need a longer bed for the saw to ride on. So I just added some pieces to it, and then after I figured out what length I wanted, I chopped it off on the chop box. And that's pretty much it. I just adjust it to whatever angle I want. Grab a hold of the fence there next to the knob, and then run my saw down it. And the saw blade and the bed that the saw rides on come to the same point, so I can just mark wherever I need to put a mark. I just butt that up to the mark itself, and it cuts it exactly. And some of the stuff I'm going to be doing in the future will be exterior. In other words, people will see it. So I really wanted something to get very accurate cuts rather than just trying to freehand it. Another nice thing about having that zero clearance aspect, or the bed for the saw to ride on, is it also, when you're cutting an angle with the circular saw, the protective fence that comes down can make it a bit tricky to try and hold the material with one hand and cut with one hand. It kind of has a tendency to flare it out or push the saw to one side as that fence makes contact with the material that you're cutting, or with that the retractable fence. You'll see here in a second, you'll get a different angle of the shot and of the saw. So right here you can see that the bed actually lifts that fence completely out of the way, so it's really easy to keep that nice accurate cut all the way across the piece. It doesn't want to ride one way or the other. So when I make this permanently, you can actually see I'm taking notes now about things I don't like, things I'm going to change on the next one. And I tell you, the adjustment rod's going to be gone, and that won't even be there for the next build. And obviously I'm going to use much thinner materials so I can get through a 2x4 or 1x4 without any trouble with my cordless circular saw. So if you watch here, you'll see me just take notes all over the place on this thing, and these are all improvements and changes that I'll make for the next one. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be building a permanent one of these in a future video. Talk to you soon.